So you're thinking of moving to Kansas City and the surrounding areas like Leavenworth, Kansas, but you want to know the pros and the cons, the good and the bad, before making that decision to move to Leavenworth. Well, in this video, that's exactly what we're going to talk about today, because Leavenworth actually is the first city in Kansas. And I'm in downtown right now, and there's a ton of history here. And if you like to live in a smaller town, but still close to a bigger city like Kansas City, then this is a great pro about Leavenworth. But there's also some cons that you'll want to know about, so that way you can weigh up both the good and the bad, the pros and the cons of Leavenworth. So stick to the very end, so that way you can get those as well. And we're going to get after it right now. So if this is your first time on our channel and you want to know everything there is about living in Kansas City and the surrounding areas like Leavenworth, Kansas, then make sure that you subscribe below, tap the bell for notifications so that you can be the first to know about the current market here in Leavenworth and all of Kansas City. My name is Jimmy Ezel. My wife Nikki and I are part of the Living in Kansas City team, and every single day we get phone calls, text messages, and emails from people just like you and you and you. And so whether you're looking to move in 7 days or 7 months, feel free to reach out to us, as all of our contact information is in the description box below. We'd be happy to help you make a smooth move to Leavenworth, Kansas, or anywhere in the Kansas City area. And today we're talking about Leavenworth, Kansas, and the top pros and cons of Leavenworth. Now, before we jump all the way into the pros and cons, let's take a little quick walk, quick stroll through downtown. There are 28 blocks with over 250 businesses. You can see this runs all the way down, actually all the way to the Riverfront Rec Center there. And then, there's just shops all around me. So let me just show you some. There's a little overlook antiques and military supplies. I think you can see that. Over here, you've got a little church. That's cool. Take you around here. Here's a book barn. Just a lot of history. I think I said this, but just in case, Leavenworth actually is the first city in Kansas. So there's a lot of history here. Fort Leavenworth is here. If you're watching this, if you've ever heard of Leavenworth, Kansas, tell me in the comments what you think of Leavenworth. Most people will say like Fort Leavenworth or maybe the prison. And so that's when I was growing up, that's what I thought of, those two things. But there's actually, those are the major things I would think that most people think about it, especially since we have such a big base here in Fort Leavenworth. And inside of my blog tour, and also the map tour, we've got some more information about this, so make sure you find those videos as well. But look here, here's another antique store. We'll just keep kind of walking. Dad's Toys right there. Also a bicycle shop. I saw some guys and gals pulling up on their bikes, meeting it with an empty one. One of the things too about Leavenworth is that they're known actually for some hauntings as well. So, Fort Leavenworth has been here for a long time. And so they talk about, here's a clothing store. There's even a movie theater downtown here as well. I saw that. Went to one of the coffee shops yesterday. I mean, there's 28 blocks is long. We're not going to walk the whole 28 blocks today, but wanted you guys to see this before we really jump into the pros and cons. Just a little bit of downtown. Let's flip around. So this is 5th Street in Delaware. I don't know if you can see that, but all the way, it goes about another couple more blocks that way, all the way down. So you've got this street, and then one on the other side. I will let you know, there's a ton of construction going on downtown right now. So anyways, those are just a little bit of downtown before we really get into the pros and cons. Let's get into the pros and cons so that way you guys can weigh those out. So let's hop into the pros and cons. We'll start with the cons first, and we'll go ahead and get started right now.
Okay, let's talk about the first con of living in Leavenworth, Kansas. It really is the job market. Now remember, there's only 38,000 people that live in all of Leavenworth, so it's somewhat limited in terms of the options of job market. You may have to get a job if you don't find one in Leavenworth in Kansas City or one of the bigger suburbs. And in Leavenworth County, there's about 83,000 people, and there are some other jobs, possibly in Lansing or maybe Baser. And then of course, if you go further south into some of the bigger suburbs, you may have to drive into Kansas City. But that's definitely going to be one of the first cons, is the job market, but just because it is a smaller town, the opportunities aren't as robust as maybe you would get inside of Kansas City. So that's the first con. Our next con is going to be the weather. I want you to understand something. If you're not used to the 4 seasons, you're definitely going to get that in Leavenworth, Kansas. We've got winter, fall, spring, and of course summer. And here's the thing, winter, it gets cold here. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We'll get snowfall. We sometimes even get into the negative. And those are the times where you just want to bundle up, especially if you're living in Leavenworth, a smaller town, you can just enjoy some of the quietness of a smaller town. But the reality is this, we get the extreme temperatures. And then in the summer, it can get very humid here. We've got a lot of, we have sometimes humidity is in the 80–90%. I mean, it can be so humid. So ladies, make sure that you know that you may have some bad hair days, right? Some flat hair days. I hear that a lot from our clients when it's very humid outside, so be aware of that. Now, spring and fall is absolutely gorgeous here, and especially in Leavenworth, walk along the trails there, especially around the river, Missouri River there, on the east side of town. But just know this, we've got all four extreme weather. We have all seasons, 4 different seasons here of weather. And then also in terms of weather, we also have tornadoes that come in the Midwest. We are in Tornado Alley, so be aware of that. So that's definitely going to be a con for some of you that may be coming from the south and used to warm temperatures all the time, or maybe you're from the north and you don't like the summer humidity. We definitely going to have that. And so just be aware that you're going to have all 4 seasons here in Leavenworth, Kansas. Our next con for Leavenworth, Kansas is going to be the location. Now, I did a map tour, so if you go find that video, I really explain on a map of where Leavenworth is and the proximity to everything. But just know this, it is out there in the northwest side of Kansas City. It's kind of by itself, like a little island out there. Now, you can still get to every place with major highways, except for if you're trying to get to the north side of Kansas City, you may have a little stretch there where it's a lot of rural highways. But just know this, that's the one thing I think it is a con that is out there by itself. Now, it's a con for people that maybe like a little bit more of the city feel, right? But if you don't like that, then of course it would be a pro for you. But for most people, I think it might be a con because you do actually have to drive a little bit, 20, 30 minutes to get to maybe down to the Legends area. To get to the North Kansas City part, you've got 30, 45-minute drive there. So just know there may be a little drive if you're wanting to get somewhere to have a little bit more activity or fun. Now, there's plenty to do in Leavenworth, but just know that location, you are out there isolated, out there in the northwest part of Kansas City. So for that reason, it could be a con for some. The next con is going to be the limited nightlife and entertainment. Now, unless you're on the base, they have some things out there for the military, but inside of the city, it is somewhat limited because it's a very, it's a much smaller town, a little bit more quaint. There's not as many options for nightlife or entertainment. You really would need to go to the city for that and probably really just jump on the major highway, get on 70 and go downtown, or get out to the suburbs, the bigger suburbs of Kansas City to enjoy some of that nightlife. And if you're a young professional, that definitely may not appeal to you. So that would be a con for some, is that there's just limited nightlife and entertainment. Now, there's also a pro, of course, in terms of there is some fun stuff to do in Leavenworth, and we'll cover that here in a second. And just know this, that don't expect there to be a lot of nightlife and entertainment in such a smaller town with Leavenworth, Kansas. Now, one of the other cons there that you may want to consider is really that the rent to buy percentage is about the same. So, 50% people rent there in Leavenworth, 50% buy. Now, the reason why, of course, is probably higher than most markets because of our military base, Fort Leavenworth. And so, many people are there for just 2 to 4 years, and so they might as well just rent. There is a pro to that for some military. It could also be a great way, and we can talk about this later, but a great way for you to start to buy a property and then eventually rent that out to other people and start to accumulate some assets. And we can help you with that as well. With the Living in Kansas City team, we can absolutely help you with some of that. But that's definitely going to be a little bit of a con for some people looking at Leavenworth as a whole. They may see it as a con because there's more, about the same in terms of renting and buying for, the market there. We feel like, there's plenty of great homes and price points, and make sure you find our neighborhood vlog tour. So I'll show you actually some really nice homes, different price ranges and different price points that kind of gives you a representation of where Leavenworth is going. So that would be a con, is really just the rent versus buy. And let's go to our next con. Now, this last con is really because of all the convicts, if you get my play on words there. Leavenworth, whether you like it or not, it actually is known also for the federal penitentiary there. Now, I want you to know it's a con, but understand too, it's a federal penitentiary and it's well guarded. You hardly ever hear about it. But, the thing is, if you're strolling through the city and you see it, you can see the barbed wire and things like that. I mean, I remember growing up even thinking, wow, there's a huge prison here when we would stop in Leavenworth. And even today, when we go up there, you can see it. So that could be a con for some people. There's no need to leave it out because you're going to run across it and see it as you start to learn a little bit more about Leavenworth. So I would say that could be a con for some people. And so let's put it down as one of the cons. And now let's start to move towards our pros. Our first pro that I want to go over is really affordability, and that is the cost of living in Leavenworth, Kansas and the cost of housing is so great. The cost of living in Leavenworth is a lot lower, really lower than the national average in terms of your budget and families, because you got a smaller town. You'll be surprised that groceries are a lot less, things like that, because of the smaller town. It's not as much as, especially when you start getting into the western suburbs of Kansas City and even some of the northeast suburbs. I mean, the cost of living is a little bit higher because the homes there, the value of the homes are much higher. And so I will share some numbers with you. As of July 2024, the median home price in Leavenworth, Kansas actually came in at $260,000. That was about a 23.5% increase from this time last year. Now, we don't expect that to always be happening, as you know, so just know that's a big increase, but the median price per square foot was about $142, and the median sold price was about $193,600. So what that tells you is, at $142 per square foot, I can tell you right now, when you go to the western suburbs of Kansas City and the other suburbs on the eastern side of Missouri, there are definitely some home price, especially new construction. You're going to see that jump $50, maybe even $100 or more, especially with new construction. And so what that means is you're going to not only have a lower cost of living in Leavenworth with groceries and bills and expenses, but also housing. You can get so much more house. And I'll show you that in our vlog tour neighborhoods too, the square footage. You'll love that and appreciate that, because I was doing some other vlog tours of neighborhoods in some of the western suburbs, and you can tell it's much, much higher. And so a lot more money for your house, as well as your living expenses, your cost of living. So I would absolutely consider that to be a huge pro for living in Leavenworth, Kansas. Another huge pro really is the community and the amenities that Leavenworth offers. I mean, Leavenworth has a very strong presence in terms of the community feel, welcoming people, friendly environment and atmosphere. There's a big walking trails, especially along the Missouri River there, local markets, recreational facilities, walking, for the outdoor enthusiasts, there's beautiful parks there. And so you have a lot of really community and amenities that make you have, just this whole family, Midwest feel, atmosphere. And so that's a huge pro. And the other big pro to this community is that, we have Fort Leavenworth, and the military families just add this whole dynamic. People moving in now for 2 to 4 years, you'll see them, throughout the city when they come off base, and they add to the community, to the whole town's culture. So that's another big pro, is the community and the amenities that Leavenworth offers. One of the other big pros for Leavenworth, Kansas is really its diversity. Because of the military base and people that will actually end up living in Leavenworth or retiring there or staying there for numerous years, that you have a much more bigger diversity actually than some of our suburbs in Kansas City. And so that adds, I think that's a huge pro, because you just get to experience other cultures, other people, and their thinking and the way they live. And so diversity is another pro that I put up there, is for, in terms of living in Leavenworth, Kansas. All right, another big pro is the education system in Leavenworth, Kansas. One of the things that Leavenworth has done is they've done a really good job of paying attention to the quality of their schools. So they've got one high school, they've got 2 middle schools, 5 elementary schools, and 1 pre-K school. There's about 3,700 students, but it puts about a teacher ratio at 16-1. So that's slightly lower than the national average. And that basically means that your student, your child, right, will have the ability to have a better ratio and also be able to spend more time with the teacher. They've also got some private schools. You've got St. Paul Lutheran, and then Immaculata High School as well. And then also from a higher education standpoint, you've got University of St. Mary. So plenty of, in terms of education, if you are a family and you've got children, you'll be able to find those schools. You can go to best schools. Plus you can reach out to us. We can help you when you're ready to make that move to Lawrence. We can help you get some information on that as well. But just know this, there are very high percentage of people that have high school diplomas in the city, and people graduating from high school. And then of course, there's also the ability to get, even higher education, since you're, there in Leavenworth. You're not too far from Lawrence, where the University of Kansas is. And then of course, even further west, out there, you've got the University of Kansas State University as well. So higher education, definitely. And then of course, on the east side, you've got tons of different colleges on the Missouri side as well. So education is important right there in Leavenworth, Kansas, and that would definitely be another pro. Another huge pro, I believe, is actually the commute time. You can see Leavenworth, even though it's out in the northwest side of Kansas City, the commute times for Leavenworth or any of our suburbs actually, or any smaller towns, is so great in Kansas City because we just don't have a lot of the way the loop and the system in terms of getting people around and where the jobs are located. You'll find out the commute times are a lot less than many other cities compared to our size, right? And so what that basically means is that you're going to have the ability to stay, spend more time at home with your families, things like that. And the great thing about Leavenworth too is there's, on the north side, of course, you may have a little bit smaller highways to travel across to the north side of Kansas City, but then you can just take 73 down to 7 and then boom, right onto 70, and that interstate takes you right into the city, and very easy to get around. So definitely one of the big pros is going to be your commute times. Another major pro, I believe, is actually the whole small town feel. I mean, you've just got that Midwest hospitality. Remember, Leavenworth was the first city in Kansas. And so you'll just find out when you start to walk downtown and the trails, every time we go up there, everyone's just so friendly. I mean, it's just part of it. It's not a big bustling city. You get a little bit more of that in Kansas City. It's definitely a different feel than if you're coming from the bigger cities on the East Coast, West Coast, or Chicago, because Leavenworth is a little bit smaller town. But just know you're absolutely going to get that small town feel in Leavenworth, Kansas. Our last pro, and I believe it's a really cool one, is really the military base there at Fort Leavenworth. And what's awesome about it is that one, for all of our military, past and present and future, we want to thank you for your service. And we never want to take our freedom lightly, and just thank you, especially to those families where you had to pay the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms. And so I think that's a huge pro. Fort Leavenworth, is a big deal in Leavenworth, of course, and for really in the surrounding area for Kansas City. Everyone knows about Fort Leavenworth. And so I think that's a major pro, because also a lot of people from, after they're done serving, they retire in Leavenworth or the surrounding Kansas City areas. And so if that's going to be you, if you're catching this, when you're getting ready to retire, reach out to us. We'd love to help you with that as well. And also another big deal in terms of a big pro for the base is that it brings some diversity, right? Because you have people constantly coming in 2 to 4 years that may be here just for a short stint, and hopefully they fall in love with Kansas City and then they reach out to us. So as you can see, there's definitely a lot of great pros to living in Leavenworth, Kansas. If you like that still small town feel, but you like to walk around, down to the downtown and maybe walk along the river and enjoy all that, and then Leavenworth's going to be a great place for you. And if you're going to be raising a family, you want some really good schools too that are in certain parts of the town that that have really great ratings, and you'll love that as well. And then of course, not too far from Leavenworth is all of Kansas City, and south, of course, is all your big suburbs. And so you can still get access to all that as well. And so, like I said, if you're looking to make a move in 7 days or 7 months, make sure you reach out to us. We'd love to help you make that smooth move to Leavenworth, Kansas. And make sure that you tap the bell, subscribe to our channel so you get all the notifications and the latest updates for Leavenworth or any other surrounding areas in Kansas City as well. We'd love to help you with that. And so with that, hope that you enjoyed this video. Hope it helped you out. And with that, we'll hope to see you around town. See you soon.